Hello and welcome to the Ronny Leber Show, where every week we bring you fascinating guests with inspiring stories of success and overcoming obstacles from the worlds of sports, business, and entertainment. To support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and hit the like button so that we can deliver you the best content possible. And now, thank you very much and enjoy the show. Get ready for this. Most of today's innovation sports presentation was born out of her creative vision in combining sports, music, and entertainment. She started her production career in the early days of MTV and then transferred her knowledge to a global sports audience with the Olympics, the XGames, the Tennis US Open, and even the Super Bowl. She has executive produced sports presentation and victory ceremonies for more Olympic and Paralympic Games than any other person in the world, and she has even carried the Olympic torch. She's originally from Portland, Oregon, and right now joining us from Palm Springs, California. Please give it up. Here's Christy Nicolay.
Yay. Wait, do we insert applause here? Go applause.
Yeah, it's us. Woo, 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 woo.
Oh, okay, got it. Wow, you knew things I didn't even know you knew. That's amazing.
I do, and I'm quite wowed by actually reading by having researched you, by having read about you, by all the background that I went through. When you hear that, does it also wow you? Like, does it fascinate you from time to time? Are you thinking like, wow, that's quite a story? Or was it your dream when you wanted to grow up? How was that?
No, I don't know. It's a little embarrassing, to be honest. I don't know, but I guess I didn't know that I was gonna grow up and do these things and do this job and work in sport and work in Olympic Games and travel and all of that. But it's I'm certainly grateful because I do love what I do. So somehow it all worked out. But yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet. So glad I didn't do that now. But I also wanted to be an Olympic gymnast. So I think I was probably inspired by, Olga Korbut and especially Nadia Comaneci, probably from Olympic Games. So I always grew up, always kind of had Olympic Games in the back of my mind. Not, wasn't so sure I would ever be an athlete. And of course I wasn't, but I do get to work with the athletes, which is pretty awesome. So
that is awesome. And your story is incredible. We're going to get into all of that and also into what it takes actually to produce and executive produce Olympic ceremonies and so on. And you said you wanted to be an athlete when you were growing up. And I think that that relates to many kids out there. Like for me, for example, growing up in Europe, I wanted to become a professional soccer player. Also, that did not happen. Somehow I also ended up in that field, but not a lot of people are that lucky. So tell us, how did you get there? Because you grew up in Portland, Oregon, if I'm correct, or in that area.
Yeah, that's right. No, I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon, in northwest of the U.S. And I think, my dad made sure that I was pretty well-rounded in sports. I mean, I played baseball. I was the only girl on the, little league baseball team. I played shortstop and I pitched and my dad made me like a skateboard ramp in our basement. So it was like an unfinished basement and like perfectly smooth concrete. So I used to skateboard around our basement and I played soccer as well. I mean, every kid plays soccer or football, you would call it. We call it soccer. I grew up skiing, although now I snowboard. I think my dad made sure. Basketball. We had a basketball court in our backyard, and our neighbors had a tennis court. So I kind of grew up, doing a little of every sport. So I really always loved sports. I just, wasn't really sure like what I was going to do with it. I think I didn't know that you could have a job in sport at that time. So it took me a while to figure it out.
So how did you actually figure it out? Because I think that, and I can relate to that, because also it was never in my field or in my thoughts that I could be working in that area in a way. And especially sports entertainment, like who does that? Yeah. And then how do you get into that? So what's your story? How did you get into that?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I kind of did everything else. I mean, I was a flight attendant. I was a park ranger. I used to work for a California state park system. I moved down from Oregon when I was 18. I moved to California because I love the sun, and Oregon has a lot of rain, except in the summer. But I came down to California, and so yeah, I was a flight attendant, a park ranger. I used to run the surf competitions at San Onofre, which is a really good surf beach down here in Southern California. Let's see, I worked for the Ritz-Carlton. I used to manage their fitness center, so I worked there for 8 years. It was like a really nice 5-diamond, 5-star resort on the beach here. And then as all my friends were graduating college and going on with their careers, I was still trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do. So I went back to school. I was always interested in photography, so in film and production. So I took a film class because I thought it would be an easy A and good for my GPA. So I wanted to stay on the dean's list. So I'm like, I'll just take this easy film class. And it actually was really good. The professor, would have us write screenplays, and I would write true stories about growing up in Portland. And growing up, I had like one brother and 4 stepbrothers, and all of my neighbors were boys, and so I was pretty much a tomboy, and rode motorcycles and that kind of thing. So I used to write these true stories, and then my professor said, "A great imagination, A+." Or and so I kind of got into production world, and I was also studying photography, and then I got into a class where I could produce and direct all of my own shows. Now, this was back when things were like on Channel 3, like the local cable channel, and we had VHS tape. And now I'm making myself sound old because probably some people don't know what VHS tapes are. But yeah, it was the first time that I developed this 30-minute kind of magazine show, and it was about sport and fitness and entertainment and travel, because those are all the things that I loved. And it was the first time that people were writing in and asking for copies of the show. So
you created your own TV show, is that correct?
Yeah, just for my little college, just for school. And that's when my professors were like, "Look, I think you're really onto something here." And so I just really learned to do everything that I loved. And so that show was about everything that I loved. And kind of around that same time, I had gone to the French West Indies. I lived on St. Lucia, and I worked for Club Med, and I met some people that were working for MTV there. So MTV was shooting there, and I just kind of got to know all these people from MTV, and they had to me, it was like the perfect job. And so they gave me a shot, and I got in. I started my production career with MTV, and then I went on to VH1, and then I did the Eco Challenge adventure races for Discovery Channel, and then I got a job with ESPN's X Games. And
okay, before we get into the sports, the sports stuff, let's go a little bit here into like how you got step by step into all of that, like into the production world. And then when you look back from today, what would you say, what was the guiding force that actually guided you towards that career or success in a way? Or did you even define it as a success back then? Or did you just, it sounds like things were falling into place for you.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, always not always, but a lot of times, in Hollywood or getting into production, a lot of it is, who you know first, and then it's what you know. So you definitely have to know what you're doing and be good at what you're doing. They say you're only as good as your last show, or in our case, you're only as good as your last sport event. So it's definitely a little bit of the right place at the right time, but it's also working hard and putting in the time, and it's definitely paying your dues and networking, and it's just I don't know, it was just, I look back and I do feel incredibly lucky, but I also know that I did work really hard. So, getting into, my interview at X Games came through a girlfriend that I worked with at MTV. So she said, hey, you do all these sports. You love skateboarding, you love surfing, you love wakeboarding. You should go talk to these people at ESPN. And so that was really how that happened. So it was just going after things that I love to do. I don't think that I would have been, so passionate about, I don't know, like a cooking show, because can't cook anything, but I think it's like when you go after things that you love and you put your focus towards that, I think that's kind of what opened some doors for me. And then, just like I said, worked really hard.
And I think this is a beautiful message also to take with you, because I believe also that was also for me when I was done with my university studies. I thought, what do you want to do now? And then it was really, hey, I want to do something that I'm passionate about. And then it was figuring out, well, that's a great concept, but what is it? And then I was like, okay, getting to that point, like, okay, what am I passionate about? What is it that always juiced me up already when I was a kid? What do I love to do in my free time? What to spend my money on? What to talk with my friends about? And somehow it was always those events that bring the whole world together, like Olympic Games or like the Soccer World Cup and those kind of events. I thought that's something, an area that I would love to work in. I didn't know yet what to do exactly, but it was this fire. And so I can relate to what you're saying right now, that with the passion and everything is easier. And also, if I'm understanding correctly, that's probably something you would recommend to anybody, that to do something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I think 100%. I never dreamt that I would be able to, combine sport and travel and production into the perfect job, that takes me around the world. I also am, very passionate about working with, different culture and demographic. And I love language, even though I don't really speak anything else that fluently. I speak a few things, but and I've gotten to live everywhere. I've lived in Greece and Brazil and all over the place. And so it's really as a kid, I never dreamt, like, growing up I would be able to do everything that I loved, like all the things that I love in one job. So I think just following your passion sometimes manifests into what you want, like if you're lucky and you work hard. So.
At this phase of your career, were you very focused on the money that you were getting, or were you just following your passion and saying the money's going to solve itself?
Yeah, I didn't really, I look back and think kind of how stupid I was, because I didn't really, I never negotiated. I didn't know about negotiating. I just was so happy to, I was so happy to be working at MTV. It was like the coolest job ever. And, then of course, all the shows. I did other stuff in Hollywood as well. I worked on dating shows. I did quite a bit of stuff in Hollywood, and I wasn't always passionate about the show that I was on. And then when I got this job with X Games, it's suddenly, like I said, all the sports that I loved. I would say I'm more of an action sport type of person. I was then and I am now, but I just felt, so lucky. And then I learned so much as well working for ESPN and working on the X Games, that I was, able to apply all those things that I learned going into Olympic Games, which came later. And it was a really great experience.
So because the X Games you did with ESPN, that means you were still with television. And if I'm correct, also your first Olympic Games in 2000 in Sydney, you were with NBC at the time. How did you transition from the TV to then really doing it for the event itself?
Yeah. So as you said, I had a TV broadcast background. I didn't even know about what we call sport presentation or sport production, or what the X Games called live event production. So when I went down from LA to San Diego to interview for, it was just a field producer job for ESPN's X Games. And I thought I had been field producing on various shows and for MTV and for different commercials and stuff. So I knew that I was a really good field producer, and I was going down.
Somebody who doesn't know what a field producer is?
Oh, they produce, you have a small camera crew and travel around and you do little segments, sometimes live, sometimes to tape, and then you go back and edit. And I think it's one of the first, I think it's one of the, not necessarily entry level, because almost everybody starts off as a production assistant in production, but I thought it was one of the most, kind of beginning type jobs there is in TV production. So, but I thought I was going for a field producer for broadcast. And then I went down and I interviewed. I got the job right away. And then they explained that it was actually for the live show, so for event production. And I couldn't quite understand, what do you mean? And they said, oh, no, it's just going to go on the big screen. So at the time they called them jumbotrons. They're not called that anymore. Actually, nobody makes jumbotrons, but they're the big video boards. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try that. And even though I know, millions of people or billions of people will watch the broadcast, only 10,000 people will see the big screen, or however many people are in the venue. But for me, it was I really loved it, because it was one, instant gratification. So whatever you were doing was live on the screen, and there was no take two, there was no editing it. It was just like you did it, and it was done. And you could see the physical impact it made on the people, because you could see the people in the audience react to what you were doing. So just it was just really early days when this stuff was happening. And so yeah, it was pretty cool, and I liked it. And kind of worked my way up at ESPN at X Games and became the event director.
Wow, that's amazing. And I mean, I also know both perspectives, and I kind of fell in love with working with an audience, with really having an audience in front of me and getting this direct feedback. With, in my case, for example, saying something to the microphone, and you immediately, if something's working or not, it immediately. Right. Yeah. And especially at the beginning, when things are not working as you imagined them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
How was that for you? Was it?
No, I didn't. Like I said, started as a field producer, and then quickly figured out that we needed this role of what now you and I would probably call a venue producer or venue director. But I kind of created that role for X Games, working with broadcast and working with the live event. It was determined that we needed kind of a producer role that was a liaison between the broadcast and the live announcers and the live music director that's on site. And so, first it kind of started as you were just passing information, via a headset, via comm. And then it started to evolve, and I realized, wait a minute, we should be writing scripts, and the live event show should be in sync with the broadcast. And that's why I say I learned so much from ESPN X Games, because unlike Olympic Games or some other big sports that we do, with ESPN, the broadcast and the event production were two separate entities, but they're under the same umbrella. So they work very closely together. And I think when that happens, then you have magic, right? When everything works perfectly, and it creates a great show for not only the fans that are there, but also for the broadcast. So,
and sometimes it is the same interview. For example, when you take the Tennis US Open, where you also have been playing a role, and then after the match, you have an encore interview that is, right, on the one hand for everybody in the stadium, but on the other hand, it's for the millions of people watching around the world.
Right, exactly. And I was there at the US Open of tennis when we first started doing that. And for me, it was second nature, because we had been doing that forever at X Games, and also was not quite yet at Olympic Games. But we always did that. We showed the live interview that was going to broadcast was also going to the fans, and so in the venue. So it was not one of the first times, but I'll never forget it. The U.S. Open of tennis, we took André Agassi's final match, when he retired, and we took his interview.
I believe.
Yeah, and we took his interview to the screen, and I think, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including mine, and he got something like a 8-minute standing ovation, because he was able to, speak to his fans that had been there and supporting him. And it was really, like I said, magic. So, yeah.
I remember against Ben Becker.
That's
Beat
right.
Becker from Germany.
That's right. You did do your research. Yeah, I think it was a Monday night, even like one of our first matches. So,
I love to watch André Agassi. It was really cool.
Yeah, he was great.
So for
yeah,
you, because as I mentioned in the beginning also, that you were basically one of those pioneers in the sports entertainment field. And for me, coming from Europe, when we are looking, and there are quite some differences, which I would like to get into a little bit later, but especially when it comes to the entertainment part, with combining sports with music and then like really creating a whole show, creating an experience for the audience. What is it for you that makes a great experience for the audience, that makes a great event at a sports event?
I think when you know that your crowd is engaged, and that the athletes can feel the energy from the fans, I think that's probably, what makes a great experience for me. I mean, it's been, because of the pandemic and stuff, it's been kind of a while, to where we've really had that in Olympic Games or in other events, and it became all about the broadcast then. But I think when you can, educate the fans that are there about the sport, because especially in Olympic Games, they might buy a ticket to one sport and also get tickets for a different sport. So you really want to make fans of them. So they may just come because they have a ticket, but then they want to, you want to educate them about that sport. So, and also show them a closer look at their favorite athletes. So then they become fans of those athletes, and then, the sport becomes bigger and it grows from there. So I think if you can do that, and you can use music and use entertainment and, use sport specific announcers that can really engage you, I mean, that's when your event is good. So.
Beautiful. I love that. And also what you're saying about sports specific when it comes to the announcers as well as the music, of course, because every sports event or every event in general has its own identity, so to say. Yeah. And when you are planning those events also for different venues or different sports events, do you have an overall outcome, or do you, for example, are you thinking of, okay, which emotional moments do I want to create, or how is that? How do you prepare for an event?
Well, I start building the what I always call the perfect team. So I handpick everyone, starting with the producers and announcers and music directors, and of course we create all the video content. And it always music. Like, I love when we can ask the athletes what music they want, because the demographic of each sport is different. So I always say, I used to use an example, like what we play at figure skating is not going to be the same music as what we play at snowboarding. And the music that we play at, equestrian is not going to be the same music as what we would have at skateboarding, for instance. So it's always, I think every sport has a different demographic, and we like to pay attention, to the culture and demographic of each sport, and to what the athletes want and what makes them perform at their best as well. So
you've been doing this for many, many, many years. We were already mentioning the Olympic Games 2000 was your first Olympic appearance, but at the same time, you've been in the business for a long time. How do you keep yourself up to date? Like, how do you keep the knife sharp, so to say? Or where do you get your influences from? Because new stuff is coming at the same time. Like, in order to stay on top, you need to, as a surfer, you need to stay on the wave.
Yeah, I tell you, it gets harder and harder, because, I try to say, technology advances. So I think so should we. But at the same time, it's, a lot of the technology is going to be, involving, a cell phone. And the last thing we want in the venue, especially for the broadcast cameras, is for cameras to be, looking around and everybody's on their phone instead of watching the field of play. So it gets trickier and trickier, but but we just keep going. I can't really say that I do keep my knife so sharp, but I try to, and yeah, it gets harder and harder, but it's still fun to try. So
it reminds me, when I started out in that field, I was basically going to every event that I could and looking at what are the guys doing, how are they doing it, how are they interacting with the audience, how are they getting the fans involved, and at the same time, when you were just mentioning the technology part, while the technology is evolving, I think what is really, really important to, at the same time, not forget about the emotions. Because at the end of the day, it's all about creating an emotional experience for the audience as well as for the athletes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And some of the things that you do, I mean, I love when we do, projection and lighting, for instance, because I know that the second you turn off the lights, the crowd is excited, because as soon as the lights come down, everybody starts to cheer because they know something is going to happen. And, at the same time,
unless the blackout.
Yeah, at the same time, my broadcast friends are like, oh no, they have the lights out. So there's always a balance. And I think it's, really super important to balance the live show, the sport presentation with the broadcast. And again, it just goes back to, working together. And I just realized I didn't answer your question earlier about transitioning from X Games to NBC. Do you want me to go for that? Okay. I think I went all the way around that. So yeah, so I was at ESPN. I'd worked my way up to be their event director, and was doing X Games in San Francisco when NBC created their own action sports show called Gravity Games. And they came to San Francisco and they physically recruited me for the Gravity Games. And I really loved ESPN. I loved X Games. I didn't want to leave. But I did, as a kid, with those Olympic dreams. I always had the Olympics in the back of my mind. And that's I thought, well, if I go do Gravity Games for NBC, maybe NBC will take me to Sydney. And it did pay off because I worked on the broadcast side in Sydney. So that was my first Olympic Games, but working for NBC. And then just shortly after that, then I went back to the live event side as the executive producer for Salt Lake. And then it just kept going from there. So sorry I didn't answer before.
No, beautiful,
I wasn't.
Beautiful. It's beautiful because we're totally in the flow, and so life is life. So that's how it is. And also because you were mentioning Olympics, you were mentioning Nadia Comaneci, who was the first gymnast to have all 10s at the scores.
Yeah,
back in
that's right.
I would say it was 76.
I think 76 Toronto, and then
Montreal.
Again, and then Moscow right after that.
Yeah, exactly. Then was 84 was Los Angeles.
And then Los Angeles, where I was in high school. So
wow. Well, talking about those incredible moments, because especially sports is so rich in creating magic moments. Those moments that you will always remember, that you might tell your grandkids about, that when you go to bed at night that make you smile, or that when you wake up in the morning that to let you wake up with a grin. Share some magic moments with us that you had along your journey. Like, what is something that you really, a memory or some memories that you really keep close to your heart?
I mean, you mentioned it and I almost forgot it because, but I ran with the Olympic torch in Vancouver 2010. And I, at that time I had been working in Olympic Games for 10 years already. And, I lived in Athens. I worked on Athens 2004. And so I had been to Olympia where they light the torch with the metal, now I can't remember what they're called, where they actually light it there, and it's very special. And I was really honored to see that. And I know, that's the flame that travels and it goes all around the world. And so when I was nominated to run with the torch in Vancouver, I was an executive. Actually, I was a vice president there in Vancouver, and I had a lot of things to do. And this was really close to opening ceremony. I'm going to say it was maybe less than a week before the opening ceremony, which was my time slot to run with the torch. And I had all my team in town, and I was like really busy, and I didn't really realize like what a special thing it was. And for me, it was just something in my schedule. I had to hit, like an interview or, or something, or meeting or something. And, but my family came up, and I went, and, I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have.
Yeah. So you're at your spot with your marker. There's like a sign with your marker, your number on it. And you're in your uniform, and you have your torch that's not lit, that's waiting to be lit. And to get you excited, they first bring like this big Coca-Cola truck by, and there's dancers on it and stuff. And they're like a hype squad. So they're like, hey, Christy Nicolay, are you ready? And you're like, yeah. Cool. I'm ready. I was far too cool for this, right? And then all of a sudden I see the next truck or come by, which is the TV cameras and stuff, and everybody on that. And behind that is the previous torchbearer, who's running towards me, who has his torch actually lit. And as I saw that flame get closer to me, I just absolutely lost it. I started crying. I realized that, all of the world is going to be watching me, and I'm one person in this world, at this moment with this flame that started, almost a year before in Athens. Not a year. Yeah. About a year before in Athens when they lit it. So, that was really just the most amazing moment. And, I'm again, like so grateful and yeah, that was cool.
So at that point, you knew that this was something special.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, I have a lot of colleagues that have gotten to run, and I know people that work on the torch relay. But when it hits you and you know that it's your moment, then it's pretty cool. I had you run like the length of a football field, and all my team was on, the side of the road, and it's like a parade route, so there's a lot of people there. And I just remember one of my colleagues on my team, they were like, slow down. you start running. I mean, I'm not a fast runner, but I guess I was like running too fast because they're dodgy, spectators on the sidewalk. So I was like, oh, okay, because it's over so quick. And then you're like, oh, I want to do that again. But
did you get to keep the torch or something, or did you get?
Yeah. I could have pulled it out of the, I didn't know, but yeah, it's in the garage right now. But yeah, I did get to keep my torch, and it has my number on it. So, and my uniform as well. Oh.
That's very beautiful. That's very beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. Also, besides incredible moments, you also get to work with some incredible people. Who are some people that come to mind when you are like, that was awesome to work with that person, or maybe it's somebody that you were a fan of, or how was that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many. I mean, when I think about, athletes, again, that goes back to XGames and like how they carried over to Olympic Games, like Shawn White and snowboarding, for instance. I worked with, on a lot of different events, and I don't know, Johnny Mosley, he was a Olympic, he was a gold medalist in Nagano. And when I worked in Sydney, which now I look back, I think that was the best Olympic job, best Olympic Games job ever, was, I produced a segment called Johnny Mosley Down Under. And the whole concept was, what do you do with a gold medalist from the Winter Olympic Games who has full credential access in the summer and nothing to do? So for that, that was for NBC. So it was just Johnny and I and a camera guy. And we had full credential access. Like this was my first game, so I didn't even understand, what all the access meant on a credential in Olympic Games. At X Games, it was so relaxed comparatively. So it was like, wow, we could go anywhere, we could do anything. And, we would do things like cover the Sports Illustrated party with Muhammad Ali, or we went to the track star Michael Johnson's birthday party at Planet Hollywood and hung out with Prince Albert while we were there, or just incredible things. So
Michael Johnson at the time, 200 and 400 meter world record holder.
Yes, you really did your research. You didn't even know I was going to say that.
No, but I know it. I've seen it.
You know it. Yeah.
Yes.
So that
1933,
was
I believe it was his world record in 200, and
okay,
43 something in 400.
Yeah.
With
so
the
that
golden
was
shoes in Atlanta.
Yep. So it was really I don't know. I've been all over, and I met a lot of cool people. Even in Hollywood, I think one of the first celebrities I ever met was John Travolta, and I couldn't speak because
I saw another picture at the opening of the Atlantis at the Bahamas.
Oh yeah.
With Michael Jackson. Jackson. I know also that Leonardo DiCaprio was there and so on.
Yeah.
What did you do there? How was that?
I did. Wow. Where is that picture? I don't even know. Okay. I worked. That was in my early days of production. I was working on the press junket for the Atlantis. And I had just the best job. I was just a production manager. I had moved up from being a production assistant, and I was in charge of a lot of things there. But that was, it was by one of the most renowned event planners. His name is Colin Cowie. And it started with Grace Jones came off the top of the Atlantis sliding down on something like a zip line. And when she landed, it triggered like fireworks across the whole hotel, on every balcony. And then I think Jimmy Buffett started playing on the beach. And then when he was finished, it went over to the stage where Michael Jackson was. So, I worked with Michael Jackson. I guess that's a big one. And,
you could say so.
Yeah. So I also taught aerobics to his bodyguards. So when I worked at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel, Michael stayed there for a month, and he had the presidential suite. I think he had the flu or something, so he was recovering, and he was living basically at the hotel I was working at, and I was managing the fitness center. So I taught aerobics to his bodyguards, and then they took me as their special guest to the show with Michael. So I sat next to Janet Jackson and Sidney Poitier, and it was another good moment. So, the Bahamas, the Grand Atlantis, that was a really fun event to work on. I also did a lot of eco challenge adventure races, which kind of satisfied my adventure travel, because we did those in Morocco and Malaysian Borneo and New Zealand and all around the world as well. So
I've seen some videos from Robin Benincasa, who won several of those, and it's
she's amazing.
Quite amazing. Yeah, she's incredible. I've heard her speak many times.
Yes. She's amazing. Yeah, she was. Gosh, I feel like she was there every year I was there. She always had a great team, and Ian Adamson as well. He's a really good adventure racer now that I still talk to as well. So,
do you remember any? Because I guess everybody that for example, you just need to ask a DJ for weird requests, and you're going to get a ton of weird requests that they've gotten in their career. Do you remember any weird requests that you got? Like, what was the weirdest request, or something like that, or something in the top 3 or so?
I remember this only because I did an interview about it, but I remember, I feel like it was like the Testaments in Vancouver. And it was like one of the really kind of or maybe it was it was either like a motocross athlete in X Games, or it was like a snowboarder or something in Olympic, but some like really sort of tough guys asked for Britney Spears to be played for his run. I was like, really? And he said, yes, really. And I'm like, are you sure? He said, yes, really. I don't know. I've had there's a skateboarder that always wants, this is when I used to do street league skateboarding after X Games and before it was in Tokyo, always wanted the what is the Star Wars theme? You know, the Walk of the Empire.
Oh, the Emperor, the Imperial March.
Yes, the Imperial March. Thank you. I can never remember the name of that, but yeah, he always wants that. So, no, you get. I mean, it really runs the gamut. And also when we used to ask, we used to have a website. So for the Salt Lake 2002 Olympic Games was the first time we did a music request website for the athletes. And I remember that all of the Norwegians, like cross country, Nordic combined, the most requested band was ABBA. So they, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it's all over the place now, you know.
I can just tell you from working at a big ATP tennis tournament that one of the top 3 players in the world, and I'm not gonna mention his name, but he actually, when he was asked about what entrance music he would like to have, and then basically like give us 5 choices, and one of them was seriously from a kiddie contest, like from a TV kiddie contest, the kiddie contest version of an like a cover version from the kiddie contest, which was we didn't play that. I can tell you that.
Yeah, you got to kind of be careful sometimes. You know, you never know if they're teasing you or not. I do remember at the U.S. Open of tennis, I think Serena Williams really liked Rage Against the Machine. And Andy Roddick always wanted Enter Sandman by Metallica.
It's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, of course they change, you know, over the years, but there's always some, you know, that I'm like, oh, okay, they like that. That's good to know. So. Yeah.
You've been all over the world, and you've been basically producing and doing sports shows in pretty much, I don't know if you've been in Africa, but besides that, you've been in every part of the world doing that. And for us here in Europe, what would you say is the biggest difference between sports entertainment or sports events in the US and in the rest of the world, let's say in Europe? For example, now when you're looking back at the Munich game this year, that in the NFL Munich game that really made a lot of headlines also in the US.
Oh yeah, I was there for that. Did you know that? Okay.
I did not.
Oh yeah, I was there for that game. So I didn't work. My company produced that game.
I know that.
And I went there because I was on my way to some meetings in Dusseldorf, and then Lausanne. So yeah, I stopped there and went to our game. Well, that's good. That's good. It made headlines. It was really fun. It's a great stadium to be at there in Munich. So yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, in the U.S., I mean, I think we put a lot more emphasis on the show, like on the entertainment aspect. Like if you go to an NHL All-Star game or an NBA All-Star game or the Super Bowl that my company produces, it's really, I know people that will go to the Super Bowl just for the halftime show, and I may or may not be one of those people. Depends on
who the halftime show is.
Yeah, it depends who the halftime show is. So that's I think in the US or North America in general, we probably put a bit more focus on that than I'm not saying it's bad or good, but we do that more than I think we do in other countries that I've worked in. So but
beautiful. When some is watching now and saying, wow, this is awesome, I would love to work in that field, and just listening to your stories that are amazing, what is something specific that you are looking for in new talent, like in somebody that somebody needs to bring with them in order to work in that field?
First, I would say, I mean, they gotta like to travel. That's the first thing. It's hard to be successful in this industry and specifically in sports and stay in one place unless you're going to work for a team. But I think that you got to have a lot of energy. You got to not be afraid of long hours. I know I just saw some special this morning where people are opting to, work part-time now after the pandemic. And like for me, I mean, in what we do, that doesn't exist. I mean, you might work really, really hard for 8 months, and then you're off. You have a little break until you focus on the next games or the next event. But I think you really have to love your work. I really, especially like detail-oriented people. I think attention to detail is really important. And if I could go back and do anything myself, I would go back and learn as many languages as possible, because I didn't know that I would be moving to different countries all the time. And so I would do that. And let's see, what else? I mean, I think just follow your passion and love what you do, and then you'll most likely work really hard at it to be the best at it. So.
And one thing that I actually heard out from talking with you is getting proximity with the people that actually are in that field. Like, do whatever, even if it's something that isn't, but really just get in proximity with those people.
Yeah, definitely. We have my company has an academy, so we ran it for the first time at the Lausanne 2020 Youth Olympic Games, and then we just did it again in Lausanne. Yeah, and then we just did it again in the World Games, which were in Birmingham, Alabama this past summer, and that was really fun because we were able to take students that wanted to get into this industry, and we were able to teach them, like, how to be producers, and some were announcers and some were music directors, and gave them a little taste of what it's like. And some of them from Lausanne, I mean, one guy in particular was an English announcer at the Beijing 2022 Olympic Games after just doing Lausanne 2020. So, and also we just took a DJ from the World Games to Lake Placid, where I just completed the World University Games in Lake Placid. So, it's good. It's good to kind of give back and use everything that, I've learned and that my team has learned, and be able to teach the kind of the next generation, the youth that are young professionals that are making their way into the industry.
What is somewhere where people can get in touch with you if they want to know more, or also at the same time where they can learn about the academy?
We don't have an academy coming up right now, but they could follow Van Wagner Productions on Instagram. And also I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Christy Nicolay. So they can always direct message me there. And also our Van Wagner website, vanwagner.com. Although, like I said, we don't have an academy coming up right now, but we will in the future, I'm sure. And yeah, so.
That's awesome. Christy, it was such a pleasure. We're almost done with our time. What is one final thought that you would like to give our audience with before we part?
Tough one. I don't know. So if your audience is people that want to get into sport, I would just say, just go for it. Just do it. Just do whatever it takes. All you need is a foot in the door. Just get in somehow, and then just work really hard, and hopefully it pays off.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christy. The time has been flying. It was such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much, everybody. Christy Nicolay.
Insert applause. Yay.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end. To make this content even more valuable for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts, and also share this video with somebody you care about who absolutely needs to see this. Thank you very much. Have an outstanding day, and see you next time.